Well, welcome to my latest video. This is on a German sports car that most people don't even think of, and that's the Opel GT. It was a concept car for the Frankfurt Auto Show in 1965, and it was just done as a show car, but apparently the people went so crazy about it that they decided that they would put it into production. The design was done by a guy named Claire McKitchen, who also is notable for doing the 55 Chevrolet. He did Corvettes, he did Corvairs, he did Camaros, all sorts of things, and Chuck Jordan. They were both GM designers, but they were transferred to the Opel office in Germany for a while, and that's when he designed this. And apparently they spent quite a bit of time in air tunnels working on getting the aerodynamics just right. And because of that, it's supposed to be able to do 115 to 120 miles an hour despite its 90 horsepower engine. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say. Now, underlying the sexy body is mechanicals from an Opel Kadett Rally, which was a relatively mundane car. And the weight of the whole thing is 2,000 pounds, so it's a very lightweight car. The bodies were fabricated by a French carrosserie named Chasson, and then they were finished by another French company called Brissonneau and Lotz that was in Paris, and then the bodies were shipped over to the Opel plant in Bochum, Germany, where the cars were completed. Production actually started in 1968, and it came with two different engines, 1.1 liter or the 1.9 liter. The 1.1 liters were not very popular and didn't sell many. 1.9 liters, 90 horsepower, and 110 pound-feet of torque, and the car supposedly did 0 to 60 miles an hour in 11 seconds, which wasn't exactly groundbreaking, but wasn't too bad. Came originally with a Solex carburetor, but most cars were converted to Webers because they performed better. Was built on a modified Kadett chassis, and one of the big modifications was they moved the engine a foot back to give it sort of a front mid-engine to improve the weight distribution, although the weight distribution is still 54% in the front and 46% in the back. Suspension up front is a transverse leaf spring, believe it or not, with unequal length wishbones and tube shocks. And in the back, it's a live axle with coil springs, trailing arms, and a panhard rod. The brakes are discs in the front and drums in the rear. Steering is rack and pinion. 4-speed manual is what it came standard with, or you could get a 3-speed automatic. It looks like there's a trunk lid, but there really is not. Supposedly, the no trunk lid is to improve the structural rigidity. There were 103,000 built in total, 70,000 of which came to the U.S. between 1969 and 73. They stopped production in 74 because the U.S. bumper regulations changed and they couldn't adapt them to the car. Although the other real killer of the Opel GT was the 240Z. When the Opel GT first came out, if you wanted a coupe sports car, the competition was pretty limited. It was like MGB GTs, Triumph GT6, Porsche 912s, none of which were really earth-shaking. Apparently the Opel GT was so popular you actually had to pay over list price for it when it came out, and for quite a while afterwards. But in '69 the 240Z came out with 6 cylinders, a lot more power, sexy styling, Japanese quality, the whole bit. And they hold some corners very nicely. On the other hand, the engine is not exactly a screamer. Anything above 3,500 RPM and you're kind of wasting your time. It has a modern amount of roll going around corners, but it really sticks very nicely. Although it's not the most powerful engine in the world, apparently there are 2.5-liter fuel-injected engines from the later Opel Manta that will bolt right in, which will give you more power. And to me, the most annoying thing about the car is the 4-speed transmission. You really could use a 5th gear, and apparently there are 5-speed transmissions that you can use to cure that problem. Of course, no car is perfect, and as most of cars of this vintage, rust is the big killer of these. They put the battery in the nose of the car, which seems absurd. I actually moved the battery back on this car behind the seats, but it's a very popular place to rust behind under the battery mount. Also, the floor pans, the rockers, the area below the windshield, the doors, and sometimes in the shock towers. So that's the biggest killer of Opel GTs, is the dreaded rust. There's also a weakness in the wiring for the headlights, and you can go online and see how to cure that problem. Apparently you can eventually get short circuits and sometimes start a fire. They also recommend, instead of the current going directly through the ignition switch, to switch to a relay for the starter circuit. As far as Hollywood stardom, it's most notable for being the car of choice for Agent Maxwell Smart on Get Smart in the last season. Apparently he started out with the Sunbeam Tiger, went to a Carmen Ghia, and then finally finished up with an Opel GT. Now, one of the truly unique things about this car is the way the headlights pop up, and I'm going to demonstrate that. I don't know if you can see this on the video, but the front fenders really poke up in the air, which reminds me a lot of a Ferrari Dino. Of course, that's the only thing that will remind you of a Ferrari Dino on this car, but very reminiscent. So this is the fire-breathing 1.9-liter engine with 90 horsepower and 110 pound-feet of torque. Should have a Solex carburetor over there, but has been converted to a Weber, as most people did. Apparently they perform much better. One of the really unique things about how this car is built is the brake pedal comes through the firewall, and there's a long rod going all the way up to here. And then in front of the radiator, you get the brake booster, and the master cylinder is all the way up there. Very strange. You probably can't see it down in the hole, but the battery is supposed to be way up there in the very front of the nose, which seems horrible for weight distribution. So I put mine back behind the seat. Another unique thing to the Opel GT is up in the back corner is a pedal that when you push it, it squeezes a bulb for the windshield washer, and it also will activate the windshield wipers. So you can either tap it lightly for an intermittent wiper when you need it, or when you need to wash the windows, that's where it goes. It comes with a fairly extensive instrument package. You get a tach and a speedo, a ammeter, oil pressure, temperature, gas tank, and a clock. And you get your rocker switches for the fan and the defroster and instrument lights and parking lights and all that kind of stuff. This is the famous handle for the headlights. You push it forward to open them and pull it back. It takes a little bit of practice and a knack with the wrist to get that right. And then there's a 4-speed transmission. It doesn't actually have a glove box. It has a hole in the dashboard that you stuff things down, and that's it. So as stated earlier, there's no trunk lid per se. Instead, behind the seat you have a pretty large parcel shelf. And then there's a vinyl flap that, when you unsnap the snaps, you'll find the spare tire, and that's also where I've put the battery just for better weight distribution. So that's the Opel GT. I think it's a particularly attractive car. I love the rear end, the slight concave with the very slight spoiler and the big wheel arches. But it's a lot of fun to drive. Doesn't have a ton of power, but it's a ball.